Here we're going to show you how to do the formatted file input and output. The formatted file is actually called text file. So all you need to do is to convert the data into a readable form, which is a string, and then output those strings to a file. Similarly, the data from a formatted file, they are readable strings, so you need to read the strings into your program and convert it into the data, be it to be double precision values or integers, and you need to do the conversion and for further processing. So we're going to discuss a few functions involved in the formatted file input and output. The first function we're going to discuss is called text scan. And text scan is very similar to the text read function. However, there's a fundamental difference is that text scan use file ID instead of a file name. And it actually gives you more flexibility in the file operations. And here is how we use it. So we will open the file using the fopen, and we will specify it says read because we're going to read data from the file. And the same thing that if we find that the FID is greater than 0, which means the file open is successful, and then we're going to read. So this is a text scan function. So it will specify the file ID and also the format of data for each line. And in this case, it will specify that the data will be the first column will be a string, the second column will be a numerical value, the third column will also be a numerical value. And when the data is read from the file, they will be stored into a cell array. This cell array will have the same number of columns as those in the file. And in the end, you need to close the file. So let's see how it goes. So we hit the run section. And then we got the data called the data over here. It says 1 by 3 cells. And if we list it here, if I say cell, no, sorry, it should be the data. And it says 1 by 3 cells. And each cell is 1 column. So if I say data, curly bracket 1 is to pick up the values of or the content of the first cell, which is another cell. It includes 3 strings. Similarly, we can do the second column and numerical vector, and the third column numerical vector. So this is how you use a text scan function. And next, we're going to talk about the fprintf. And we all know the fprintf function, and we use this function to output data in the command window. And you can use the same function to output data to a file. The only thing you need to do is to add the file ID as the first input of this fprintf function. And here is the example. We will get a vector of 30 random values, and we open a file called textdata.txt. And because we're going to output the data, so we choose write mode, and we will check the file ID to see if it is greater than 0. If so, the file open is successful. We can continue the output. So we will specify the file ID followed by this format string and the data. So in this case, what we're going to do is to output 2 values in one row and then move to the next line. So even though this is a one-dimensional array, what it does is that pick the first 2 values, output at the first row, and then the next 2 values, the second row, so on and so forth. And when we are done, we close the file. So let's take a look, and we just run this section. And over here, we should be able to see a new file here called textdata.txt. And if you click it, you will see we have 2 columns and altogether 15 rows. So total values will be 30. And another thing I want to let you know is that every time when you open the file, and the file ID, if you look at here, the file ID here is 4, sometimes it is 3, and you will never get a file ID of 1 and 2. And this is a reason, because they are reserved for special purposes. If the file ID is 1, it means the command window. So if I say f print f, if I use file ID as 1, say this is a test. If I do so, oh, I think there's a typo here. So if we do so, you see the data actually show up in the command window. What about the file ID is 2? Well, it also show up in the command window, but this time it's actually use a red color as a font color. Well, this means that this is a error message. So in other words, if the file ID is 1, it means that you're going to output the data to the command window. If the file ID is 2, which means you're going to output the data also to the command window, but it will be considered as a warning message. So just some side knowledge to let you know. And those 2 values are always reserved, and those 2 file IDs are always active. Okay, so next we're going to talk about another function called fscanf. And this is to read a text data of numerical values. So same thing, you need to open up the file and get the file ID. And in this case, we're going to read the textdata.txt back, and we will the read as a mode. And if we open the file successfully, and we're going to read it line by line. And in this case, you will see we are going to use a while loop. So which means each iteration will read 1 line of data until the end of the file. So this function FEOF is to check to see the file pointer is pointing to the end of the file. If it is pointing to the end of the file, it will stop. So what it returns is a true value when it hits the end of the file. So the condition for the loop will be the not FEOF. Okay, let's see how it works. So we're going to read the data in the format of numerical form, and we are going to read 2 for each time. So we know that there are already 2 columns of data in that file. So this should be fine, because every time I read 2 numerical values, it will be the entire line. And then we will print it out, the 2 values in the command window. So let's see how it works. Here you go. So when we printed the file, 2 values per line, and this is exactly what you have seen in this text data. So you will see this 0.030, this is 0.744, and that's the value. Okay, so that's exactly the value of the text data.txt. So sometimes you will say, okay, what if I mark this value wrong? Let's say we're going to read 3 at a time. Let's see what will happen. So if I run this section, every time you try to read, you read the 3 values. And if you want to print it out, you actually print out a 2. And what happens is that it will print out the first 2 in one row, and then the third will be in the next row. Okay, and then this is what happens. So you have 1, 2 in the first row, and the third will be here. And the next time you print will follow like 1, 2, and then the third. So this is how it happens when you see this layout. So in other words, it is very important that you understand the data format in that file so that you can read it back correctly. So this is about the fscanf function. And lastly, we're going to discuss the 2 functions. One is called fgets, the other is called fgetl. And there's a slight difference between these 2 functions. Both will read 1 line of text from the file, but fgets will keep the end control character, but fgetl will just get rid of it. And let's see how it works. We'll select this section. We're still going to read this text data.txt, and what we're going to do is to read it line by line until we hit the end. So every time I got the line, I will send it out and add a new line character in the end. And here's what you will see. If I run this, you will see data is outputted in this format. And each row will separate by a line. So why this is happening? It is because we use fgets. So fgets will keep the end character, which is a new line character in the file. And now if we want to output the data, so it will also output the new line character plus the one we just added. So in this case, you will see it will output the data plus the original new line character. So the cursor will move to this location, and then we will add another new line. So you'll move to the following line. So that's why you will see the separation between rows. However, if we use the fgetl, it will get rid of the end of line character in the original file. And if we run this, you will see there's no separate line between rows. This is because what you read from the file is here, this whole entire row, but the end of line character is left out. And when you print it out, you add back the end of line character, which is a new line character, so that the next line will start it here. So that's why you will not see the separations between rows.